Between 30 and 40 is the growth time. The opportunities present itself. The partnerships in law companies happen. That 30 to 40 decade is when so much is open to you. For women, that's prime fertility years. I was not married at that time. I wasn't going to be a single parent. So the idea of kids was kind of on the back burner for me when I was growing a lot in media, and it was very lucky for me. I met somebody, I remarried at 40. We were very lucky to have a child, and I will tell you, it was my last egg. And in hindsight, I realized how lucky I was. But that is a choice for women today to make. Are they going to use those years and that time to navigate professionally, or are they going to have families and figure out how to juggle both?
Hey everyone, I'm Jean Chatzky. Thanks so much for joining me today on Her Money, where we talk about how personal finance and money touches everything in our lives. Look, I know the Barbie movie, it's a little old at this point. Frankly, I could watch it again and again, but I want to talk about what it said about corporate culture and women. There's a scene in the movie, you'll remember, where Barbie makes it to the Mattel offices, which are gray and colorless, and tries her best to evade the all-male, by the way, corporate executives who, unbeknownst to her, want to put her back in the toy box, want her to conform to what society believes Barbie should be, not the woman that she is becoming. Tons of other movies and television shows through the years show the corporate world as bleak, as oppressive, especially for women, where we need to be ruthless backstabbers or risk not getting ahead, where we need to leave our kind, caring, fun selves behind, or our positions are at risk, where we need to come to work wearing some version of a suit of armor that we can strip off at the end of the day when we return to our real lives. But no matter how modern media portrays it, the reality is that work does not have to be the place where we leave our fun, real selves behind. Not anymore. Bonnie Hammer, my guest today, says we should scream and laugh and cry our way through every minute of it. In fact, she says that by bringing our muted selves to work, we are really holding ourselves back. Bonnie is one of those women who really doesn't need an introduction, but I'll give her one anyway. She is the vice chairman of NBC Universal, and she is here to share what she's learned in her 40 years and counting career in the television business. She's got a new book called 15 Lies Women Are Told at Work and the Truth We Need to Succeed. It was already named one of the best books of the year by Amazon. Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. It's fun.
Well, it's fun to have you, and I'm excited about this conversation. For those of our listeners who don't know you, you have been called the queen of cable. You've had a hand in everything from rocketing the Kardashians to fame to pushing Steven Spielberg to cast Dakota Fanning in Taken to transforming the WWE into a version of a male soap opera. Can you give me the quick snapshot of your career as you tell it?
Well, it's kind of hard to put 40 or actually 50 years. My first TV job was literally 50 years ago that I started this past April 50 years ago. But the kind of fun way I like to talk about it is my first job was as the youngest, greenest production assistant on a kids' television show, where all of the PAs, production assistants, were assigned talent to handle. I was youngest, I was the greenest, so I got the dog, a sheepdog that wasn't particularly well trained, that was a Nepo hire. It was a producer's dog that I had to help navigate the set and its place where it sat, where it ran, where it caught a ball, and because it was a union set, I had to clean up its crap. Two, being vice chair right now in an industry that's drastically changing, as it always had over the decades, but even more so now. And in some ways, I'm helping others, friends, peers, other executives, navigate the changes and the world and help them dealing with the crap that goes along with the politics of an industry changing. So not a whole lot has changed over the 50 years. It's just a different kind of crap that one's helping with.
Is that the answer to why write this book? Because the crap still exists?
You know, it's a good point, but in many ways, yes. When I look back, I wish I had some of the advice that others could have given me who have navigated the world. And when I started, there were relatively few women in the world. And so as I grew up and as I learned and succeeded and tripped and failed and got up again and tried again, I realized that what I wanted to do when I got to a point where I was agenda free, where I wasn't protecting others, my team, or asking for money for a new project, I wanted to figure out a way to pay it forward, to mentor would mentor other women to help them navigate the world and have a little bit more fun and a little bit more confidence in the way they do it. I was lucky. I had several mentors during my stint, but they were all men. And I think it's very different when you can have some advice from another woman who somehow managed through.
Absolutely. You start the book by saying that women think that we have to take ourselves seriously if we want other people to do the same. Where does this sense of restraint come from for women, and why do you think we need to have a little more fun?
It's interesting. I think women really do believe they have to be serious, be responsible, always look the part in order for other people, especially men in the business, to take them seriously. However, when you look at the guys' world, they have been playing golf for decades with coworkers, with clients. They have fantasy basketball, football leagues within the workplace. They are going out for cocktails after work when women are going home to take care of the kids and make dinner for families. So part of it is cultural, where women haven't been given the opportunity. Even years ago when GE owned us and everybody did go out and play golf, it was very rare that they asked a woman to go along with them. It was always the guys. And so I think it is cultural, where we believe that to be true because we kind of were forced into a mold and we didn't have the opportunities. But it's also because we don't often have the time. We come to work, and if you believe a Harvard Business Review study, over 90,000 hours of our life are spent at work. But women have to run home, take care of the kids if they're lucky enough to have them, and be responsible for the family. So I think it's ingrained in culture. But I do believe that it's really important to learn how to lead, developing a culture and living within a culture where you can embrace fun, humor, collaboration, going out and drinking together after a success or going out and drinking together after a failure, and just sharing those moments in time and realizing to be real and to be human does not mean you're not going to be taken seriously. It's just part of a culture that's much healthier. And I'm a huge supporter of really good cultures that support friendships and relationships, healthy relationships. I'm not talking about some of the garbage that, many of us over the years have experienced. I'm talking about healthy cultures.
Well, what I like so much about that answer is that you didn't really talk about the uniform, the getting dressed to go to work, the outward appearance of it all. It's much more expansive than that. And I think a lot of us focus on the look of it rather than the feel of it. So it's important that we take a step back and we remember to do that. We get a lot of advice that we should follow our passions, we should follow our dreams. You say instead we should follow the opportunities, and that actually following your dreams is nightmare advice. Why do you say that, and what's the difference?
Well, when I read your bio, you did follow a dream. You knew what you wanted to do. You took a little diversion. You worked within another industry for a bit and realized this isn't it. I have to figure out how to move around. But it wasn't until you, if I remember correctly, realized the piece of your industry in journalism and everything you wanted to do had to do with money and how you navigated your way. I don't think if you had just pursued journalism, you would have been as happy or as successful as you are until you tripped into the financial piece of it. And that's pretty much what I tell people. When you think about where our dreams have come from, when you're a kid, it's whispered in your ear from your parents, perhaps what they think you should be, or perhaps what they didn't get an opportunity to do that they want you to do. That was my brother. My parents always thought they wanted a doctor in the family. They never could be that. They pushed that along for my brother. It is from fairy tales or superhero movies we see when we're very young. And maybe later on, a college course we took that kind of intrigued us a little bit. But we can't be what we can't see, and we can't dream what we don't know. And when we're that young, how much do we really know about what's out there? Not a passion we might have, but what does it mean to live out that passion and succeed with it? So I'm a big believer about opening yourself up to opportunities, trying things out, especially when you're young, and the kind of money you're going to make, the differential is really pretty small between trying something that's a passion, experimenting with something else. If it doesn't work, trying something out, and zigzagging till you find your adult dream, one that you actually understand what it means to live that dream out. And even then, I'm still a big believer in following the opportunities. So you're not just going vertically, you're going horizontally and creating a web that helps you grow in so many different directions that you have even more opportunities as you grow and get a bit older and more experienced.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely been the case for me. I often advise people to go through the doors that open, even if they scare you. The Today Show opened so many doors for me. All of a sudden, somebody said, "You want to give a speech?" And I had never given a speech, but the money was pretty good, and I definitely wanted that. And so I gave a speech, right, and wrote a book. And if you allow yourself to take these opportunities, which are chances, they're risky, they feel scary. Sometimes you can end up places where you never thought you would be. I mean, your dream originally was to be a photographer. You took a job as a production assistant and then kept following the breadcrumbs.
What I tell people is I tried photography for years. I worked in a photo studio for this incredibly successful Belgian photographer in Boston. And I was in the darkroom and my nails were turning yellow from the chemical, very different from today, digital photography. These were days that you were in the chemicals and all that stuff. And I was miserable being alone in a darkroom. Then I got promoted to be by his side, taking commercial photographs. And I realized I don't like artificial light, artificial settings, artificial everything. I wanted to be outside with journalism. Then I tried that. And of course, as a young photographer, I was just ambulance chasing, and that wasn't being Cartier-Bresson. But what you have to understand, you don't have to give up your passion, but your passion doesn't have to be your boss. You could still do that and follow that love, but not necessarily make a living at it.
You distinguish in the book between the idea of personal worth and professional worth. You say that they're two different things, and that people who are just coming into the world into the working world need to understand that they are in fact two different things, and that building them it requires two different paths. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I mean, I know that so many of us, and I think it's particularly true for ambitious people, we tend to feel that our personal and our professional are wrapped up pretty tightly.
Yeah, there's a big difference. I think in the book, I write something as silly as people conflate personal worth and professional worth. It's like sticking your hand out in New York and thinking you're going to feel the temperature in New Delhi. They're very different. And I think the younger generation growing up right now doesn't understand the difference. And part of it is our generation's fault. When I think about when I was a kid, there was no such thing as A's for effort, trophies for attendance. We weren't rewarded for things that we really didn't do or do well. But we've created a world where the kids coming up just for participating are getting trophies, which makes them lose the conceit that you have to work and try. And in a sense, I don't necessarily like the word compete, but work hard at something to get somewhere. And so I think a lot of the younger kids trying to enter the businesses right now kind of grunt work. They believe they should be getting better pay, better hours, better titles before they even prove themselves. And that's not how it works in the professional world. You have to prove your professional worth. You have to work hard. You have to raise your hand. You have to show the effort, which is very different from your personal worth, which we're all born with and nobody should ever or can ever take away. So in the professional world, you have to prove that worth to grow, to get paid, to learn. And then after a while, there is a place and time where you are worthy to ask for those raises and to raise your hand for the promotion and to expect an XY paycheck for XX work. I think it's really important, but you have to get to that point and prove that worth.
So I know it's kind of like asking you to pick your favorite child, but
Exactly.
of the 15 lies, of the 15 lies, which is the most egregious, which is the most damaging, which one do you think should be struck from the English language?
Well, there are a couple, and you're right. Picking one is very, very difficult because I believe them all to be true. But I think for women, it's the conceit you could have it all. I think that is incredibly damaging because, first of all, there is no such thing as all. And Jane, your all versus my all versus everybody else around us all is different. So first and foremost, you have to define what all means just for you, for yourself, for your family, for your world. And then even then, you have to prioritize. And then within that conceit, you can have it all. There's somehow a secondary belief that everything should always be in balance. Your personal life and your professional life. And you should never feel anything but perfect within it when you are in a good job that you love and you have whatever your personal life is. But the truth is, everybody feels out of balance. When people ask me, how do I do it? To me, it's like a balancing act because I always feel guilty when I'm at work that my family, my kids were home and I was at work. On vacation, I always felt guilty because my colleagues were all in the office kind of waiting for me to answer these days emails, back then a call now and then. Even now, I'm an empty nester as a vice chair, and I feel guilty when I leave my dogs at home for too long. So it's all about balance. It's all about sacrifice. But most importantly, it's about understanding what your specific all is, defining it, prioritizing it, and knowing that you're never going to have even that all the time. And that over time, that all is going to change. And that's okay.
You basically write that you will have choices, and you have to make the choices about which things are the right things for you at that point in your life. You have written, you said that the choice that you made to get divorced at age 29 from the husband that you married at age 19 affected your career tremendously. Tell us about that choice. It must have been a difficult one.
It was, but it was an appropriate choice at the time. When you think about meeting somebody when you're 16, being married when you're 19, still in college, and move on with your life. This was a wonderful human being. He's still a great guy. There was nothing wrong other than we weren't necessarily right for each other to live together for our adult life. But it was the timing that made a big difference for me, which is interesting, but only in hindsight, because I did not realize it then. Your 30s, between 30 and 40, is the decade when you look at most men and you look at women who are really navigating professional world, whether it's the media industry, the legal field, financial field. Between 30 and 40 is the growth time. The opportunities present itself. The partnerships in law companies happen. And that's when people push. That 30 to 40 decade is when so much is open to you. For women, that's prime fertility years. If you are pushing your way and navigating your way in the professional world, what does it say about your personal choices? So I was not married at that time. So the idea of kids at that point, I wasn't going to be a single parent, was kind of on the back burner for me when I was doing a lot of navigating and growing a lot in media. And it was very lucky for me. But it also made the possibility of having children, getting married again, very, very nerve-wracking. I was very lucky. I met somebody. I remarried at 40. We were very lucky to have a child. And I will tell you that I gave birth to Jesse at 43. It was my last egg. I went through some infertility stuff, but I couldn't even go through the full course then because years ago, they wouldn't risk the statistics of giving me infertility that now many women can get very easily at 40, 43, even 45 and older. So I was lucky, but that wouldn't have been for everybody at that time. So there's a challenge in terms of those choices. And mine wasn't necessarily a choice. And in hindsight, I realized how lucky I was. But that is a choice for women today to make. Are they going to use those years and that time to navigate professionally? Or are they going to have families and figure out how to juggle both?
You made a couple of other significant choices when you had that baby at 43. Your husband, your second husband, chose to work a little less and stay home a little more. And you decided you were going to stay in the workforce full time. And I've been a parent in the suburbs for long enough to know that there is and was a lot of pushback against both of those things. How did you navigate the societal expectations?
It was difficult. First and foremost, I was incredibly lucky that Dale was willing to take a step back. Now, in truth, this is somebody who he went to Dartmouth undergrad, Harvard grad, then Columbia grad, and knew that he had to make money. So he went from studying religion and philosophy, thinking he would be a professor at university, to Columbia business. So he get finance background and went to the financial world. He did not love what he was doing. So for him, not to shoot for partner, maintain clients, work full time, do what he had to do, was fine. He was willing to do that because it wasn't his passion. I was working my passion. However, two stories are still to this day make me a little nuts. So one time, Jesse, when he was in elementary school, so he was obviously under 10 years old, maybe 7, 8, And I remember asking for one of the few sessions to come in for the yearly review of your kids. And I asked for the 7:30 a.m. one so I can get on an 8 o'clock train and be in the city to work. The principal of the school gave me such a guilt trip. And this is in a pretty comfortable, pretty open and progressive community, that I was a working woman, not home with my kid. I remember getting on the train, calling Dale, and crying all my way in because I was given a guilt trip. The other piece was on the weekends. I was not home during the week. Granted, I would come home, we'd have dinner, next morning, go back to the city. I would go to Jesse's Little League games. And all of the women knew each other, all of the moms. I knew so few of them other than some of the immediate friends. And nobody would talk to me. I would say hi to their husbands because I knew them from the train. So I would get that evil eye. Right. That wasn't particularly nice. And the only way I could win people over, and I did ultimately, I would bring my camera. I would take pictures of all of their kids. Monday morning, get on the train, drop off those, film capsules, go to Kodak. Friday, go pick them up. Saturday morning, give out real photographs of their kids the next week. And I would do it week after week till they realized, oh, she's kind of nice. That was very generous. That's how I had to weave myself in because I was a working woman that they were like,
Yep.
not
yeah.
pretty.
I mean, the schools that insisted on coffee with the principal at 11 in the morning, right? That was never going to work. I have to say, my favorite piece from the book, my favorite nugget from the book is that you write about how being, and this is a quote, stereotypically female helped you propel your career forward. I've always thought that about my career. I think that Jeff Zucker hired me to talk about money because I wasn't a gray-haired man. What did it do for you? And how do we use that?
First, I want to tell you I adore Jeff Zucker to this day. So I'm delighted he did that with you and for you. And to this day, I still think he's one of the most loyal and talented men around. That said, stereotypical is a funny word. To me, it's more owning what I believe the innate characteristics of a woman is or are that differs from men, which is scientifically and or biologically, the oxytocin in our system basically supports caregiving, empathy, intuition, collaboration, all of the things that some people believe are weaknesses, or I believe are amazing strengths. And I think if women would just understand that empathy, compassion, working together, working with one another, which comes naturally to us, biologically and emotionally, is such a strength rather than a weakness, and apply that in the work setting, they will be shocked how far that goes. And I do think that also women, because they believe there's so few seats at the table, don't support each other with that compassion and with the desire to bring others up along with them because of the few seats. That is such a natural thing for somebody to do. So for me, it's telling other women, embrace your XX factor, embrace your ability to empathize, to have compassion for your peers, and especially those who work for you, because that increases loyalty. That makes people want to stay with you forever, helping them, giving them, supporting them, making them feel safe, but also pushing them in a positive manner is all something we do so well. And sometimes I think we think of it as weakness rather than strength, and it's an amazing strength.
We do fall into the trap of thinking that it's a zero-sum game, especially when it comes to the opportunities for advancement, the seats around the table that you talk about, and salary. And you spoke to a woman who was taking on a similar role to yours at NBC Universal. you introduced her to your lawyer to help negotiate her contract and instructed your lawyer to tell her exactly how much you were making so that she would know what to ask for. That is highly unusual. What made you do it?
What was so clear to me was the person she had worked for before had kind of pushed her down a bit. I mean, supported her enough to maintain her gig, do really well. She was in a different division than I was, for sure. But she was getting the same title I had. She was getting the same responsibility in a very different division. And my attitude was, what she's making is crazy. It's so low compared to what she should be getting. They're not going to take away my money. They're not going to take anything away from me. They can't. I have a contract. I know what I'm worth. The contract signed for 3 to 5 years. What is the downside with having somebody else make the same money or close to your money? How can that negatively affect you? It can't. And to me, the more people, the more women we get up into, the C-suite, that level, that help other women grow up and pay them appropriately. I don't understand the downside. The more of us that are there, it's just going to help change the culture for a healthier culture. So I never even thought about, why wouldn't I? And my lawyer questioned me. He was a guy. My lawyer questioned me. He said, are you sure you want to do that? And I said, why shouldn't I? Give me one reason how this can hurt me. And his response was, I don't have one. I said, then tell her the truth.
We only have a couple minutes left, and I know that a lot of the women who listen to this show are either bosses, they're high earners, or they're on their way to being bosses or high earners. So I just want to jump to the end of the book where you talk about how to level up in the later half of your career. As you think about those years and making significant strides ahead, what would be the top piece of advice or two that you would give to these women?
Well, I think the main piece of advice, especially in the crazy world we're living in right now, is to be able to embrace change and to understand that the only thing in life and in our industries, regardless of what they are, is change. And instead of trying to fight it, instead of trying to pretend it's not there, instead of wasting any time in pushing back, is just to learn how to embrace that change and figure out how to navigate it and find your place in that change and helping others to navigate along with you. And I look at myself right now at this stage of my life, my career, knowing that, my next chapter is going to start soon. And the book in some ways was my way of embracing, okay, I may not be under the umbrella of NBC forever. How do I mentor other women? I found a way, but I know that I'm going to have to figure out my next chapter too. And instead of being frightened by it, I'm kind of excited about what can I do next? How do I embrace this change in a world where ageism as opposed to sageism is embraced, and figure out what that next step will be and how do I continue to pay back. So for me, it's knowing that change is going to happen. It's going to, because industries are changing, but also it's how do you pay it forward to other women who are working with you, for you, under you, so that they have an opportunity. And no matter how senior you get, figure out a way to push it down.
Bonnie Hammer, the book is 15 Lies Women Are Told at Work. Thanks so much for doing this today. I think that a lot of women are going to benefit from all of this advice.
Well, thanks, Jean. It was delightful talking to you and also to have shared the NBC experience together.
Absolutely.